Okay. So generally speaking, our most recent problem that we had as a school was class size and making sure we met the class size of no more than 35, and then also the class contacts of no more than 168 students per teacher. And so there end up being about 4 or 5 teachers who one of the two categories, or even two of the two categories, we had not met. So basically, the first essentially 4 weeks, obviously we knew it was a problem, and so we submitted a request to the district office for additional staffing, and we got 3 sections plus a 0.5 for next spring in English, in science, and in history. And what happened was, in science, we posted all of the positions. Science was for physics, and nobody applied. We posted the position in English, and we have a substitute that's covering for one of our other teachers on leave right now. And what's interesting is that person is doing a 5/5 job, but because this person is a sub, the contract does not apply to the sub. At least this is what we were told. And so this particular person had the opportunity to do a 6/5 position. After really thinking about it, really thinking about it, going back and forth with other administrators, really thinking about, is that the direction we want to go? I basically kind of made a call to say, I don't think it's a good decision to make a substitute go 6/5, especially because it's English. This person is a relatively new educator. And if our own teachers who are veterans know the curriculum won't go to 6/5, then it's a stretch to ask this other person to do it. So in turn, another issue that came up as a part of this larger issue is we have more special education students in the mainstream classes. So if a new 9th grader is trying to enroll, or a new 10th grader is trying to enroll, our classes were booked, in the core levels. So we don't get any additional staffing to put special ed students in mainstream. So one of our dilemmas is we do believe in inclusion, and we want special ed kids to have as many mainstream opportunities as possible. But to a certain extent, no additional staffing comes with them. So another problem we stumbled upon was English for sure. It was a total imbalance, like 14, 15 kids in special ed kids in one period. Okay. And we've tried to say 8 to 10 is a sweet spot. Once you get above that, then it's becoming a little more problematic. Our teachers have been great. They have been patient. So what we did to attempt to solve the problem, there was nobody who we felt qualified for the English position. Nobody applied for physics. And then history, it kicks in kind of like at the semester. We did something creative. We pulled kids out of the history class for 9th grade because it's a semester, and we moved them into health. And so it solved the problem for the fall. And then in the spring, we will hire, somebody will either go 6/5 or we'll hire an additional 1/5 to deal with that issue in the spring.
Or you get a student teacher or something maybe.
Right. To solve the English problem, we had to actually look at who was being successful and not successful as special ed students, and seeing if we can put them in our intensive English class to bring down class size. It did not solve the problem of how many kids were in the how many special ed kids were in the mainstream classes in particular periods, but it did get us down to contract. So if I go one step further, it can become problematic because twofolds. The teachers feel like we have these sections and we're not really utilizing them to kind of bring down everybody's class sizes. I, on the other hand, would love to bring down the class sizes, but when I start to look at quality of an experience, because we could have opened up another English section with the sub. I just don't think that's good judgment. We've moved kids out of your classes, but now what experience are they going to have? And if you were the parent of the child who got moved to that class, would you be happy? And this is how I start to think about problems. When there's not a clear-cut answer or a way to do it, it's like, okay, as a parent, would this be acceptable? And in this particular situation, it was not acceptable to me. So I'd rather a class be at 35 than kids be in a class of 25 with a less, proficient educational experience. So that was kind of one spoke of the problem. And so, teachers kind of felt a little miffed about that decision. The flip side of the responsibility is the timing that the district gave us the staffing. So if they give me staffing in September, it's much harder to make it work, right? Versus if I had those 3 sections in May and in June, now I can, hire properly. I can maneuver a lot better versus when the schedule is essentially already set. People are already at 5/5. What do you do? So that was the big problem that we, had to navigate through.
Okay. Cool. So I guess for the question is of how did you become aware of it? That was probably, you said the 3rd week or something?
So we knew. I mean,
you already knew before.
We stay in touch on a daily basis with the AP and Miss Harui, who looks at class sizes. So we knew we got.
Probably do it in the summer, but
right. Going in, we really knew on the first day of school because we had like 30 new kids show up who were not in our system. So we already knew, and the district basically said, put the kids in the classes. We'll worry about balancing them later. So we knew. I did get a grievance probably at the 4th week. I think whenever that date was, because we have 3 weeks to balance class sizes. So at the 4th week, the union gave me a grievance, just formally identifying that we were not meeting contract with those certain teachers' classes.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. So, what went on through your mind?
Well, this was the first time, actually, since I have been here, that we've always been maxed out in the sense of like class sizes being full, but I know I've never been grieved for being over contract. So what was interesting, a smaller dilemma posed itself. I remember talking with AP and Janice about when we moved the students, because the deadline was Friday of the 3rd week of school to try to have everything balanced. On Thursday, I talked to her the Thursday of that week, and I said, can we make the moves? She said, we can make the moves. The problem is if we hire new people, potentially those students will have to move twice. So I basically made a decision. I didn't want students to have to move twice, student schedules to have to be changed 2 different times. So I said, we'll go ahead and take the grievance. And then, because we were just up against the deadline, let's go through the process of trying to hire people or shake it out so kids only have to move once. And that's what we end up doing. So it may not be a popular, decision, but I just thought when we start talking about student disruption, it was already the 4th, 5th week of school. I just think if I was a student, again, putting myself in their shoes, moving twice is not reasonable. Moving once is reasonable. So I went ahead and made a decision to take the grievance in lieu of moving students' schedules twice.
Okay.
So
I actually experienced something similar at San Rafael in 2006.
Okay.
Where actually my teaching schedule changed, I think 4 times in the school year.
Oh, wow.
A teacher quit at the end of a semester,
no. Wow.
and then the replacement teacher quit after 3 weeks.
Wow. And you had to pick up the pieces. It's disruptive. It can be very. And you're an adult, let alone a student. Being here and here.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing I didn't share is we are going to reevaluate at the semester because we still have this section for English. We just didn't have the person who is covering for maternity leave. The teacher will be back at the start of 2nd semester. So potentially the teacher who's subbing right now will be available 2nd semester to pick up the one section of English. And then we'll make mass movement. So again, it's delayed. It's not that we're going to use it. It was just a delayed, resolution. So right now we have to just do kind of meet contract, and then at the semester we'll try to reduce further.
Okay. So, here's the question.
Okay.
D. What feelings uh, did you have when this happened? Anger, annoyance, frustration, anxiety, calm? I think you've been doing this long enough that you're able to separate those feelings from this type of a situation. But I mean, that's my...
It's definitely not personal. I mean, it's a numbers game, you know, at the end of the day, and the contract is there to ensure that we, you know, create conditions for learning, and I totally agree, you know. So it was interesting, though. I felt that depending upon who I talked to, I had to convey that, like, I actually agree. I agree with class size limits and, you know, not overly, you know, stressing out the teachers with how many student contacts. So I definitely don't disagree. It was just a matter of timing. I think my frustration is I appreciate the sections, but again, the timing in which I receive them is frustrating. I think the other thing that was frustrating is we essentially had this onslaught of ninth graders show up that weren't in our system, and our enrollment projections were off. They were off almost 40 kids. So it's frustrating, you know, because I believe we do our due diligence between the master schedule committee, all the conversations we have in the spring, all the work we do in the summertime to, you know, open up school smoothly, and then boom, you know, we get kind of blindsided. So it's a good problem because we have a strong ninth grade class. We have 301 students, and they projected us at 260. So we have a great ninth grade class, but it becomes messier, right? So my feelings is just, I would like to avoid the messes because that's why you work and plan and think things through. But sometimes they're unavoidable. So you just have to, you know, continue to see the forest through the trees and not, you know, and take people's gripes and take people's concerns, but it's not personal. Everybody's coming from their perspective.
So I have an idea or suggestion.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to hear this. I was thinking, like, is it possible, and it may not be possible, this is just, I'm just thinking of, after listening to this, I'm thinking of this suggestion. Is it possible to, like, make a hypothetical schedule
Okay.
where these 40 people do exist?
Okay.
And so, like, here's Schedule A, which is the one that we have to go by with all the names, all 1,100 names that we know for sure. And then scenario B with 40 extra kids that we, you know, and then so that way on day one, if we have to make the change, we could say red light, Schedule B. Bam.
Right.
I don't know, that's just an idea.
Right. No, I mean, and we always think about, because we always have 25 kids from Parkside that are lagging in enrollment. And so we always kind of have it in the back of our mind.
Yeah.
Where the rubber meets the road is staffing.
Okay, staffing is...
That's where because if I don't have the staffing to run these extra sections, I can have all the plan Bs in my brain. I got to have that staffing. I know, for example, in math, we knew we did something similar because you guys submitted it, where if we got the second section of SAS, then Manuel Lito was going to pick that up, and he was going to go from 4/5 to 5/5. Those kinds of scenarios are much easier to have plan B on. It's much more difficult if you don't have somebody ready and able to pick up the kind of that overflow section.
Yeah.
Right? That's what makes the staffing a little more difficult to do plan B. So,
And it's not just staffing in general, it's quality staffing.
It is quality staffing, because you can get a body in there, but, right, what is the experience? And our teachers are pretty good, right?
Yeah.
So we wanted all students to have a comparable experience, no matter what class they're in.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Cool. So would you say any of the frustration, would have to do with maybe the superintendent or anybody in the DO as well?
Yeah, I mean,
I talked about that.
I know that they don't do anything intentionally, you know, and they want to make sure the students are here on campus before